I am getting on here to do a little recap and reflections for the Mission to Mars session. It was about a month ago, I suppose. Um, Jason had to be out of pocket for a little over a month, maybe near 6 weeks, something like that. He's already kind of went over that. Uh, we had trouble kind of picking back up. Everybody was busy with different things. Um, we did happen to reconvene in a session, uh, sort of on the fly with John and Todd and myself, and we picked up, and they agreed to give a little test play for the little system up, the little resolution system I came up with. So we did that. And I asked them, "What you want? Fantasy? You want sci-fi?" And they said, "Let's go sci-fi this time." Well, I mean, in full disclosure, I'll do the little spoiler aspect of it afterwards, but it was only in one shot, right? So I kind of drew from a basis that they could understand, which is more industrial sci-fi. We had played. Jason led us through those dark places, so it was a little bit of that, which draws comparisons to, in my mind, 2001. The era of the late 70s, early 80s films, in Star Trek in particular, as far as the roles that you may play, from captain to engineering, the science officer to medical, etc. Um, so just using the resolution system and choosing from basic roles within that a small crew that would be contained inside of a small crew. The situation was that from the moon base, and it was early soul exploration that they were endeavoring to do. And so I threw out there that from the moon base, they had seen the satellite around Mars that they hadn't previously seen from Earth. And their mission was to go assess the situation, find out what they could. Small crew, let them have four. Todd played medical officer, Balthazar, I believe, some such. I can't remember John's character's name, but he was the captain. They picked an engineer, I believe, and a security officer, Murphy and Incognolia, maybe were the two. But nevertheless, they set out on the rocket, which maybe I'm picturing some kind of the 60s cartoonish rocket that would, have the displayed triangular fins on the bottom of it and would land, and a little bit of a lunar lander type of situation, that would deploy and allow them to roll the ramp out, as it were, and get wherever they were going. So it was quick and easy to understand and pick up as far as from that perspective that they could hop in there and man the small crew and head out there and find out what to do. So they head out, and for the brief, we had a very small window of play, 2 hours, hard 10 o'clock stopping area, hard stop at 10 o'clock p.m. So basically, started at the location right outside of the satellite that was around Mars. So they had already traversed that space, and they were starting to assess the situation. It looked like a strange vehicle. It was more of a traditional layout as the ships that were designed for seafarers on Earth. Wood, planks, and metal parts. There were probably gun emplacements, as you might see on a B-17 or whatever. The little ball with the gun sticking out of them, on the side. So it was potentially a war vehicle. A flat area on top. It had solar cells on the top. There was a plaque written on the side, presumably the name of the ship, which was, I showed them a picture of it with some kind of a cryptic language that they couldn't discern immediately. Now, they attempted to land, and it was encased almost in like basically its own atmospheric area. that was being generated and kind of encompassing the ship and keeping the void at bay, as it were. And they tried to land on it. They positioned themselves above the ship and began to land. But, and I was using the random C generator on this, with simple words like gravity or, fire and whatnot. But everything I was rolling was to find out what was going on. And whenever they descended into that atmosphere, the flames kind of, because it was a dense concentration of oxygen, and they had pre-scanned this. I should say beforehand, they did launch a torpedo across the bow of the ship to see if there was any kind of gravity, right? Well, it did marginally drop a little bit before it pierced through the atmosphere and headed off into the vast reaches of space, into the void. So they said, okay, there's a little bit of gravity there generated, and they were going to attempt to land on it. So, like I said, they positioned themselves above it. They landed. Oh, hey, Jason. Yeah, Masters of Mind. It was a silent movie. We just didn't put the. I need to get a piano, player piano rolling above the mimicry of play. But anyway, they landed whenever they hit the atmosphere. Was high density of oxygen concentration in it. Lit some of these solar flares aflame, and it was eating it away. It's kind of like grass on the prairie, just burning it away a little by little. And as it did, I believe I hit a word named crossing or whatever, which is in the random C, it was indicative of something blocking their path. Is the way I took it, because the moment when they landed, they bolted there because the ship was a little bit skittish and sliding across the deck when it landed, and it caused the ship that they were landing on to move slightly, and they had to fasten it to the deck, and they did with rivets and whatnot, and they took off. But during this time, the solar cells had been eaten up by the encroaching flame, and it caused it to collapse on one side and kind of partially block their way across the decking. And as it collapsed, it also took with it some of the atmosphere and the void of space concaved into the atmosphere. All right. Now, Murphy, I think, you're always going to use their hirelings as some kind of a, guinea pig. So Todd's character sends him out there first, and he does it quite according to the role. Stick the landing, as it were, and he puts a little bit too much heft into it. And he kind of jumps and, almost goes out of the bounds of the atmosphere. And he lands, and then he's really skittish. So it teaches them that they need to basically butt scoot their way across the decking, even though there could be some splinters involved in that. But nevertheless, they do. They walk. I think the captain sends one of the men back to get some extinguisher to put out the rest of the old Flash Gordon style ship, nice. And I'll get to that toward the end of it. But they spray off the sails and manage to extinguish that, so there's no further decay of the atmosphere on top of the ship. They go across the decking into what appears to be at least the layout of this reminiscent of the classic Star Trek ship layout, right? As far as the consoles and the seating arrangement and everything like that. And there is dials and knobs, and it's still written in this cryptic language. Now, Todd's character suggests that he took some kind of linguistics course that the captain did. So we roll to find out if he's proficient in kind of ascertaining what some of these languages are. Some of these, fonts are. And he is to some extent. And every time he rolls, he gets a little bit better of it. But he can, through looking at it and being a captain himself and, over the helms, as it were, ascertain what some of these are. And so, but there was a little bit of a ball of electricity that kind of protruded out of one of the thing. I'm drawing a blank as far as what the plasma ball that you touch and comes up in arcs. and touches your finger. So there was that, and it was full to the brim, right? Well, right behind them there was basically this wall, and everything's as it's an elaborate decoration. The ornamentation in the metal is decorative and illustrative of cities and these humanoid alien type creatures that are kind of engraved into this facade. And so it bespeaks of the races that were here possibly and manning these crafts and where they came from, right? But they go back to this seeming wall into this thing, and it's basically an elevator. It's a dice tube that rolls around, and they walk into it, kind of like the tubes you might send up at the bank to send your check up. They walk into it and they enable themselves to go down. When they open up into a terrace and a vast area that's open, 3 or 4 stories open, but this gang rail that they're walking on leads to this huge domed area, and they can see on the other side of this domed area that there's electricity on the inside of it. Sparking is heavy, laden with clouds. Yeah. Do you understand language? Is perfect. Yeah. But they can see this dense cloud atmosphere on the inside, as well as flora and fauna, animals and such, winged creatures on the inside. They go up to it and they're able to open the doorway into it. And it's very tropical. The heat and humidity hits them just like that. They shut it. They're standing there, and there's a metal gang plank descending down to the floor of this basis in a little 15 by 15 area building. It looks like some kind of a storage shed or what have you. They descend down to that. Murph is waiting at the door as they go in there, kind of keeping guard, because they're seeing all these creatures and everything. And then they go in there and see these 3 tubes that encase 3 different types of aliens. And I showed the pictures to the guys. If you watch the video, if you can get that far, you'll see these different types of creatures. And they're encased in this liquid and in stasis. Seems. They didn't mess with that. They didn't mess with none of the consoles in there. They did see that there was conduit running up on the inside of the dome, the glass dome to the top, and it looked like some kind of light source, like an active live nuclear fission type ball that was sparking electricity and running down the inside and through the cloud and condensation that was on the inside of this thick glass dome that they were encased in themselves, right? It was just more predominant in getting the electricity was even running down the metal gangplanks that they were standing on. And excuse me. But whenever it got to they got to a point where Murph got taken and drug out through the foliage, they couldn't find out where he was. They saw this 6-armed beast in the center of the area. As they went back up to try to exit, they saw a 6-armed ape-like albino beast off in a clearing, and then it jumped off and disappeared. They began to leave. As they go back up the elevator and out into the area that was the console area of the command center, the captain noticed some blood around some footprints, and the footprint he noted was of their issue, shoe-wise. And then after they exited that and tried to get back to their ship, they saw what appeared to be the same uniform that Murphy had used. And he was holding his head and staggering off in the distance, but it didn't seem like his head. It seemed like basically an unprotected brain that he was holding on to that had some kind of leg extensions out of it and was piercing itself into his neck, and it was all red. They get closer, and it had pincers on it. It was trying to awkwardly adjust itself onto the body, the headless body that was previously Murphy, and it was trying to gain some kind of renewed mobility, as it adjusted, and it was making its way up into their ship, their rocket ship. They tried firing on it from the distance. First, it didn't hit. They made up, and then as it was trying to shut the door to reach over, they did hit the arm and caused it to recoil. And then as they got closer, they saw the body drop and the being that was on top of the body skitter off into the bowels of the ship. Well, the captain then tells them to unclasp the ship from the deck of the alien vessel that they was on, unclasp their own ship. And they managed to skew this ship in a way and shift it with their weight on it to where it pitched it in the area where the concave area where the void of space had gone into, to where it helped lift it off the ship, and they tumbled it off into the vacuum of space. And the door wasn't fully shut, and it tumbled off into the distance. At this point, it was around 10 o'clock. We decided to wrap it up with the epilogue that these characters could potentially try to commandeer the ship. You don't know what happened to it, live with it. Maybe they flew it back to Earth. We don't know. But that's where we left off. Now, we'll say that the creature, or rather the state of situation and where I drew this from, since we're not going to revisit it, was whenever, body jacking and the ship jacking, yeah. Well, these creatures that I had shown them and the creature that had body jacked Murph are all creatures from Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels. And in that novel, years ago, I'd heard one little sentence that whenever they were trying to make the airships, and I forgot to say that they had discerned some of the language in there as 8th ray and 9th ray. Well, the 8th ray was for propulsion. That's what the Barsoom Martians used to propel their ships. Well, in the books, the first time they attempted to do that, supposedly they overfilled it and it shot it up into the atmosphere, and it became a permanent satellite around the planet. I somewhat twisted that into saying that some of the white Martians or what have you were up there. These Martians could live for 1,000 years, and it's only been so long, right? But why wouldn't they have a situation where they could go up as scientists and try to replenish using the 9th ray, which is what made the atmosphere breathable around the planet eventually, and use it as a means to try to terraform the planet. So that's what they were doing. As far as the science vehicle to get up there, it has some protective things. That's where that came from. But anyway, guys, I'll let you go right now on this little recaps, but I do appreciate John and Todd for playing it and giving it a try and doing what they could to not get body jacked themselves. All right, take care. Talk to you later.